Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Nofan fanless CPU cooler. And yes, I did just say that out loud. I said no fan because this is completely passive, but the brand name is Nofan. But yeah, it's a weird one because it is completely passive. Now we're going to get into this, but the guys at Quiet PC sent this over to me because we were talking about this at I-44 actually. We're waiting for just the actual heat sinks on their own to come through. But just to tell you a little bit about it, I'm just going to read off the side of the box here. But basically, it supports 775, 1156 and 1155 CPUs, i5, i3, Core 2 Quad and Core 2 Duo. You'll notice it doesn't say i7 there at all, probably due to the heat restraints. Basically, it only supports CPUs up to 95 watt TDP capacity. So yeah, so it's the lower end of the market. It will support AM3, AM2, AM2 Plus, Phenom 2, Athlon 2, Phenom and Athlon X2. So Intel and AMD there. What we're going to do today actually is we're going to be testing it on the i3 2120 and the i5 2500K. And we'll see how we get along. We're going to be sticking it in the 500R, which is what I was using the other day. But anyway, it's a fair old unit. What they're all around the box that they're talking about is the fact that it's a 0 dB CPU cooler, so no noise, dust free because obviously it's not blowing any dust on it. It's RoHS compliant. Nofan system never collects dust even after a year of use. And it says dust free, you can experience the benefits of an extremely clean computer system. Free yourself from the hassle having to clean your computer. Microbes in dust fan can cause or aggravate asthma and other respiratory diseases. Nofan prevents your computer from malfunction due to high CPU temperature caused by layers of insulating dust. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get it out of the box because look, it's huge, absolutely huge. Now I'm going to put the packaging down on the floor, but do you know what I mean? If I put my hand on the top, you can see that it is really quite big. I'm looking around for something you can use as a to gauge the size of it, and I think this is probably going to be the best thing. You can see it there side by side with the D14. It's a fair old unit there. So moving the D14 back out the way again, I'm going to bring it up so you can have a good close look at it. It's basically just loads and loads of what I can only call wire around the outside. It almost looks like something you would put your lettuce or your new potatoes in to spin the water off. Woo! But anyway, yeah, I'm nuts. On the bottom, you can see there are 4 heat pipes. And you have 2 going up and around this way. And then you have 2 more coming down and around this way. It's quite an interesting design. I'm just going to get the rest of the kit out from in the box. We'll have a look at the accessories box. I've literally not opened any of this yet, so I should really have had a pair of scissors to hand, but we'll do it the old school way. Just rip it apart. Right, so we've got an instruction manual. I have to keep looking at the camera to see what's going on. Then we've got, let's have a look, thermal grease. There's a pot of thermal grease in there. You've got the mounts, and then you've also here got a back plate and some of the fittings. So there's really not a lot in the box. Just a nice mount. It doesn't appear to be a lot to it, to be perfectly honest with you, which sometimes can be a better thing rather than a bad thing. But what I'm assuming now, looking at it, is that the screws are going to go through these parts of the heatsink and actually hold the heatsink down from the outside, like around here, rather than having some kind of fiddly base, because obviously there's quite a lot of room there, but you'll be able to get your hands inside quite easily to be able to fit the screw. So that side of things might actually work pretty well. Manual just shows you how to put it on basically, so we don't need to have a look at that. But what I'm going to do now is get this fitted in our test system, and then we can move on to some testing and see how this performs. I'm actually quite interested to see how this one does. So yeah, I'm going to break off now and get on with this. Right then peeps, just a quick look at the mount. Basically you've got a back plate on the back that you poke 4 screws through from the back. You then put this little locator down through the motherboard just so that it locates it better, and then the screw comes through a little bit. Then you just screw these on the top, these standoffs. So it's actually really simple, and then pretty much all you do is you fit the unit over the top and screw the you can see the standoffs there, and you just screw it into place, and it screws in with the some springed screws. But one thing I will say for anyone that does purchase it, make sure you read the manual, because you need to make sure that the heat pipes are horizontal, so go from left to right. They can't go up and down because the heat pipes won't work properly. It must be like that, with the heat pipes horizontal. So that's a tip, or you know, something that if you're a typical man and you don't read manuals, just make sure that your heat pipes go from side to side and not up and down. But anyway, I'm going to finish off getting this fitted, and I'll give you another look when I've finished. Right then peeps, we're all installed. Again there, just to clarify, you can see the heat pipes are running horizontally. You can also see that I've got the Nofan logo, or Nofan logo, the right way up. There you can see it in the system. What I did do though was move, that's the 6850 that we always use in our heatsink test rigs. I normally test on X58 as well, but this doesn't support X58, so we're using a Gigabyte UD7 P67 board. Now with the orientation of the slots on this board, if I put the 6850 up, it does clear the cooler, but it wasn't touching, but it was like a whisper. The back plate of the GPU was immensely close. So I've moved it down just so that the graphics card isn't dumping too much heat, and we'll get a valid CPU recording. Another thing I should mention is I couldn't use my normal Mushkin radioactive RAM because the heatsink was too big. So if you are thinking about buying this, you need RAM without any extra heatsink coming out of the top, just this basically the size of the PCB. There's a few millimeters spare in there, but not enough for me to be able to get my radioactive in. I'll show you how much the difference is. Basically, will it focus? Anyway, you can see there, basically that was too much. Not by a lot, but it was too much. The silver line that's in there literally is just the same size as the PCB basically. So that's also worth bearing in mind. Now, like I said, we're going to be doing our first batch of tests on the lower end CPU, which is the i3-2120. So we will be testing this. Now, one thing I'm also going to do is test it with the case fans and without the case fans, and we'll see how we get on. But anyway, it's time for me to get this all set up and us to start doing some testing. Right then peeps, if you have a look at the lower temperature there, it's 22.7. That's the temperature of the room, so that's our ambient temperature. Wait for the camera, there we go. We've had Prime running now for 30 minutes, which is the same way I do all the other heatsink reviews, apart from this time We're running a i3-2120, which is Sandy Bridge based i3, and it's at stock literally as it comes out the box. Everything's on auto, and basically if we go down, I've had to use core temp for this reading because because I'm on the 1155 rig, I hadn't put an updated version of hardware monitor on it. But anyway, you can see the fact that we're on 100% load. The low was 32, the high was 53 and 56. So 53 and 56, that gives us an average temperature of 54.5, minus the 22.7 degrees ambient temperature, that gives us a 31.8 degrees delta temperature, which is obviously delta is above the ambient. That is with the case fans on. I'm now going to turn all of the case fans off, so the only fan that will be active in the system will be on the GPU. And I'm going to rerun these tests again. So stay tuned for some fully passive system results. On the CPU at least in the case. Right then guys, on to the completely passive test. If you have a look there, you can see that the ambient temperature is 22 degrees dead. We've actually been running prime for quite a while now. Still the same settings on the CPU. If we go down there, as I said before, I'm having to use core temp because the hardware monitor on this one's outdated and I forgot to update it. But anyway, right, you can see there high 69 degrees and 71 degrees. So that gave us an average across the two of 70 degrees dead. If you take away the 22 degrees ambient, that's a 42 degrees delta temperature. But let's face it, 70 degrees on an i3 when there's no case fans running at all, no CPU fan, that's actually a tiny little bit mental. So yeah, even I'm massively surprised with how good this is. But anyway, time to move on. Right then guys, on to the i5 2500K, which is obviously a quad core. It's obviously the Sandy Bridge quad core, just for those of you that don't know. But anyway, we're now running the system with the fans on again. And yeah, right, 22.6 degrees, as you can see there, is the ambient temperature of the room. We've been running prime again for just over 30 minutes. You can see there the settings of the CPU. Everything in the BIOS for the CPU is on auto, so that means we've got the speed step and everything like that on, and the turbo and everything, which is why it's running at 34 at the moment, 34 multi for 3.4, because that's all the stock settings for the CPU. Anyway, if we move down, you can see the low, the high, and the fact that at the current temperature, and the fact that the CPU is maxed out load wise. The max temperatures were 61, 60, 63, 61. That gives us an average temperature of 61.25 degrees across those four cores. If you minus off the 22.6 degrees ambient temperature, that gives us a 38.65 degree delta temperature with the case fans running. Now what I'm going to do is rerun all these tests all over again with the case fans turned off, so a completely passive system. Well, passive apart from the graphics card anyway. But it's now time for me to rock off and get on with that. Right then guys and girlies, we've moved on to completely passive, and by that I mean I've disabled all the case fans now, as I did with the i3. As you can see, wait for the camera, there we go. Prime's been running, we've had just over 30 minutes worth of testing. You can see there the validation that we're running all the same settings on the CPU as well. If we come down here, you can see the current value on the left, the fact that the CPU is still on 100%, and you can see the low and the high temperatures there. High temperatures were 79, 80, 82, 78, which basically means we had a 79.75 degrees average across all four of the cores, minus the 23.2 degrees ambient temperature, and that gives us a delta temperature of 56.55 for the i5 2500K Sandy Bridge, running completely passive. Now, I'm actually massively impressed with that. But yeah, it's time for us to move on. So stay tuned. Right then, guys and girlies, just a quick look there at the ambient temperature. It's 20.2 degrees in the room at the moment. Now we've moved on to the big guns. We're now testing a 2600K. Now I do kind of need to say that on the box it technically says it doesn't support this, but as we do, we've been running prime now for just over 30 minutes and the temperatures are good to say the least. The temps on the left hand side are the current temps, and then you've obviously got the low and high. But you can see that the CPU is at 100%. Well, 64, 70, 72, 67 was the highest temps I had when I took my results. And basically that gives us a 68.25 degrees average temperature. If you take off the 20.2 degrees delta temperature, if you take off the 20.2 degrees ambient temperature, that gives us a 48.05 degrees delta temperature for a 2600K at stock. We do still have the case fans running at the moment, but what we're going to do now is turn all the case fans off and run these tests again with the system completely passive. Right then, guys, moving on to 2600K, completely passive, no case fans running at all. As you can see there, the lower temperature, 21 degrees, that's our ambient temperature. There's just some proof to show you prime has been running, and still is. Have a look there, you can see that we're still running the 2600K, all automatic settings with the board. If we move down, you can see the current temperatures on the left, low and high temperatures, and still see that everything's still on 100% load. Anyway, temperatures we had were 75, 79, 81, 78. That gave us an average temperature across all four cores of 78.25 degrees. Take away the 21 degree ambient temperature, and that gives us a 57.25 degrees delta temperature. Now I just want to kind of say again that that is with a 2600K completely maxed out at stock settings with not a single fan in the case running at all. Everything is completely static, nothing is running. So I think that's quite an achievement. Anyways, peeps, only one thing left to do now, so it's time to bosh on to the conclusion. Right then, guys and girlies, conclusion on the Nofan cooler. Nofan cooler. Whatever you want to say, it's Nofan, it is an E technically. Now, when I first got sent this cooler, I was just like, oh, brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Passive cooler. It really it was just one of those kind of products that I was a little bit, wasn't really that fussed about. But I'm absolutely amazed at how good this cooler is. Obviously, we've had to go about this testing slightly differently to how we would normally do our other heatsink testing, as in we've not used the 1366 CPU, we've used a range of 1155 CPUs, but pretty much every one of the main ones. We've done i3, i5 and i7, and it passed the tests on all of them. Alright, we've not done any overclocking, but I did overclock the 2500K to 4.4 gigahertz, sorry, I think it was 1.25 volts, 1.3 volts, I can't remember off the top of my head, but anyway, it did just sneak past the 80 degree mark, but the cooler doesn't technically support overclocking anyway, so I'm just going to kind of throw that in at the end. Now, award that I'm going to give it, I'm going to give it the OC3D Innovation Award, and I'm going to kind of explain why. With the i3, it was brilliant. It worked fine, both with fans and completely passive. Awesome. In fact, if you're using an i3, then you know, it really is really good. i5, again, temperatures were very acceptable. If that was a 1366 CPU with an active air cooler, some of those temperatures I would have been happy with. And then obviously the 2600K, which technically it says it doesn't support on the box. But as you can see, even with it running completely 100% passive, it still wasn't, you know, ramping up into the 80s. So it's actually very good. And obviously we've used the 500R, which isn't, it's a very good case, but it's not the most open of cases in the world. And what I would say, if you're considering using this, having a mesh panel in the roof really does make a great deal of difference, because just to kind of mix it up a bit, I chucked a blanket over the top. Now that might sound mad, but I chucked a blanket over the top so that the heat couldn't escape. But what we need to remember is that heat naturally wants to rise. So by doing that, it was kind of insulating it, and it did have quite a stark effect on temperatures. So I would say, if you're considering buying this, please make sure that the roof of your case does have mesh, because you need to let that natural convection happen to let the heat rise up and out of your case. If you've just got a flat top on your case, then the heat is just going to sit there and it will gradually turn your case into an oven. So although you don't necessarily need fans, you do need some way for the air to naturally be able to kind of move out of the case. Now, one of the things that I do want to say is with it when running completely passive, something that you do need to bear in mind is that the rest of the components on the motherboard, because it's not being actively cooled by any movement of air inside the case, are going to get warm. So it is a good idea that, for argument's sake, if you're going to be running your CPU at 100% for long periods of time, for whatever reason, it would be a good idea to make sure that your motherboard's got some kind of extra cooling on the MOSFETs and North Bridge area and stuff like that. So if you've got a motherboard where you can see open MOSFETs, I'd either change the board or get some extra heat sinks, or if the board does support heat sinks, see if you can get some second-hand ones on eBay that are on the higher models, for example, to try and get that on there, just so that the MOSFETs aren't just sat there continuously getting hot and with no active cooling on them. It could reduce the life of your components a bit. But with stuff like the UD7 that I'm using, where they have got the extra heat sinks, it's not too bad. But during the testing, where we were running it at 100%, these did get quite hot. So all those kind of things are just worth bearing in mind. Obviously, you know, with warranties and stuff like that, it's not going to be too much of a problem if you're using brand new components, but if you're using second-hand stuff, then it could create a little bit of an issue. I would honestly say, if I was going to use this, I would probably go with a little bit of case airflow anyway, unless you really do need something that once it's on, it makes no noise whatsoever. Then I would try and at least get some kind of fans in there, even if it's just some slow fans to help move the heat away a little bit more, so everything's not being kind of like insulated and cooking. But other than that, I'm surprised how much I like it, let's put it that way. The only bad thing I've really got to say about it, and I was a little bit shocked when I saw it, is the price. And that Quiet PC are selling it for £103. This has got to be the most expensive air cooler I've ever seen. But when you consider all these, the engineering that goes into it with all these pins and everything, it's not going to be the cheapest thing to produce. And I suppose if you want a 100% passive system, you know, super duper quiet, then you've obviously got some specialist kind of needs anyway, so you're going to be able to understand the prices. But that was kind of the reason why I gave it the Innovation Award, because it's the first passive cooler like this I've ever seen. It's also astounded me how well it actually works, but because of that extortionate price, I didn't really think I could give it either of the three main awards. So I've kind of awarded it for kind of standing out there and being such a niche product, rather than trying to award it like I would the rest of the other coolers. If it wasn't for that price, I probably would have given it a gold award anyway. But thoroughly deserving of the OC3D Innovation Award. And yeah, like I said, for something like this to not necessarily put a smile on my face, but surprise me so much, and then shock me how much I did actually like it. And yeah, because I really wasn't expecting it to do this well at all. So it 100% gets a TTL double thumbs up. And if you are in the market for something like this, then get it, because I like it that much. I've been trying to think how I can use it. So you may well end up seeing this again at a later date. But yeah, really, really good product. Price stings a bit. I'm not going to go around anyway. We're going to leave it here because it's epic. I love it. So this is Tiny Tom Logan with the Nofan cooler. Innovation Award winner as well. Out.